Hey, hello everyone. Hello everyone. Good evening. My name is Afreen and I welcome you all to today's session. So today topic is Unit 13 and responsibility of paying bank. So let's discuss about what is the responsibility of the paying bank in today's session. Okay. So let's start discussing the session. Let's start. So first of all, the drawer of the check or the drawing of the check having sufficient fund of the drawer in his hand properly applicable to the payment of such check must pay the check duly required to do so, and in default of such payment must compensate the drawer for any loss or damage caused by such default. This is section 13. So this says that whoever is the drawee of the check, whoever is the drawee of the check, that will have a sufficient fund of the drawer in his hand. For example, I am the drawer of the check. Okay, now I have account in HDFC Bank. Now, for example, that bank is the drawee. So the drawee must have the sufficient fund of the drawer in his hand, which can be taken or which can be used for making the payment of such debt. Means properly available means the amount which is actually in the hand of the drawee or should be properly available. It means that that amount shouldn't be engaged in some other activities. It should be properly available to the person, properly available to the bank. It will be present in the form of the liquidity in the bank account so that the drawee can pay that check easily. Okay, and duly required to do so means whenever there is the demand for the check or whenever there is the demand of that payment of the check, the drawee must pay the check if the drawee holds the proper and sufficient balance of the drawer in their hand and must compensate. And in case of the default, if any default happens, then they must compensate the drawer for any loss or damage caused by such default. This is section 13(1). Okay, now if we talk about the two important things, when duly required to do so, it means that the check must be properly drawn and signed by the drawer. Means whatever the check is, the everything in the check should be clear and cut written. Means there should be no default in that. So if it is present in a good form, if everything is correct, then the drawee has the responsibility to cash out that check, okay, whenever there is a requirement. And if the drawer don't have the sufficient balance in the account, then the drawer must compensate the loss which has occurred in this event. So now when is the compensation of the drawer happens? First of all, in case the banker refuse the payment wrongfully. For example, banker refuse the payment wrongfully and he is liable only to the drawer of the check and not to any endorsee or holder except one. See, in case the banker refuses payment wrongfully, then the drawer means the person who is making the check, he is liable only to the drawer of the check, not to any endorsee or holder. See, for example, bank just what bank just wrongfully dishonored that check. Everything was correct but they wrongfully dishonored that check, and so in this case banker is only responsible for compensating to the drawer of the check, means for me, not to the person who is holding the check or not to the person to whom name the check is endorsed, except in the condition. For example, now if the bank winds, then it will be compensating to the endorser or holder, and if the check paid disregarding the crossing, the true owner can hold the bank liable. Okay, so in these two conditions, the bank will be paying or will be responsible for the loss and damage to the holder or the assigner of the check. But in all other cases, if the bank wrongfully dishonored the check, then the bank is responsible for the compensation of the loss only to the drawer. For example, in this case, in this example, this is me. So the bank is responsible for compensating me the losses, not the holder of that check or not the person or the assigner of that check. Okay, next. If we talk about the liability of the paying bank and the customer signature on the check is forged. Now, what is the liability of the paying bank? The bank who is actually encashing that check. What is the responsibility of that paying bank if the signature of customer is actually forged? Forged means it's actually what is actually duplicate. The signature is duplicate, then what is the responsibility of the paying bank? So let's start discussing and what an case study. When the customer signature on the check is forged, there is no mandate to the bank to pay. Obviously, if the check signature is forged or duplicate, bank shouldn't be paying that check. As such, the banker is not entitled to debit the customer account on such forged signature. For example, there is a case in Canara Bank versus Canara Sales Corporation and other case, Supreme Court this case actually was dealt by the Supreme Court. Now the company has a current account with the bank which has been operated by the company's managing director. There is a managing director who was operating the current account of that company. Now the company's accountant who had the custody of the checkbook over a period of time forced the signature of the managing director in 42 checks totaling the amount of 3,26,047. Now, when the company immediately detect the fraud, demanded amount back from the, in this case, bank refused the payment and the company filed the suit against the bank. The bank lost the suit and appealed to the Supreme Court, which is actually dismissed. Okay, means in this case, see, in this case, the managing director actually was what managing the current account of that company, and there was an accountant who has the custody of that book. Okay, and he time to time forged 42 checks signature and the forged the signature of the managing director in 42 checks, and the amount is totaling of rupees 3 lakh something. Now when the company know about the fraud, the company sue the bank for the repayment or for the cash back, but the bank reject that. Then the company filed the suit against the bank in the court, and the bank actually the bank lost the case. Bank lost the suit. Why? Because the Supreme Court says that okay, if the signature was forged, it is the responsibility of the paying bank to check the signature is duplicate or not. And in this condition, the bank is actually liable for repayment of the losses whichever is accompanied by the company. And so the bank has lost the case and they have to return back the money to the company. In a joint account, if one of the signature is forged, there is no mandate and the banker cannot make the payment. Clear? Okay, now next. See, now there are some sections which are related to this. For example, section 89, it gives the protection to the paying bank of a check which has been materially altered but does not appear to have been altered. Section 89 gives protection to the paying bank if the signature is forged in such a way that the thing or the check which is actually altered does not appears to be altered. For example, the check is of rupees, for example, 1,000. Now, 10 is added in such a way that this amount is actually doesn't appear to be materially altered and it cannot be deducted with the naked eyes. And in this case, if the perfection, if it is so imperfection, the paying bank is exempted from the liabilities of the losses. Okay, this is section 89. Section 10 defines the payment in due course, means payment in accordance with the apparent tenor and should be in good faith. And this payment should be without any negligence under the circumstances who do not afford a reasonable ground for believing that he was not entitled to receive the payment. Okay, so section 10 says that a payment in due course to any person who are associated with a company is actually when you are paying that amount with the apparent tenor, means whatever written in the check of the instrument in good faith and without any negligence, means there is no negligence on the behalf of the banker. Then the circumstances are built in such a way that the banker is actually doesn't even realize that paying such person is not the is under such a fraud. So in this case, the paying bank is actually protected because the payment is actually done in the apparent tenure and in the due course of time. Okay. Now next is section 31. It obliged the drawee bank having sufficient fund of the drawer in its hand properly applicable to the payment of such check to make payment when duly required to do so. Means section 31 says that a banker shouldn't be rejecting the check if the banker has the sufficient balance of the drawer in his hand and it is available for payment. So the bank must pay the amount. They cannot reject the amount. Okay. So these are some of the sections, important sections, which you have to remember. Clear, everyone? Yes or no? Clear, everyone? Okay. So this is, I think, the short overview of this chapter. Okay. So this is a very short chapter. I have just defined the important thing in this chapter. Okay. Just the important thing in this chapter. Okay. Now, if we talk about some other things, for example, there are some other things also. For example, the question whether a paying bank is forged check can recover the same from the paying bank was considered in the case. In this case, a check of 5,000 purposely drawn by a company was presented to the collecting bank to the paying bank and was paid. The signature as well as the writing was forged. Forgery was so perfect that it was not possible to treat with the visible eyes. The paying bank came to know about the forgery, filed a suit against the collecting bank and the payee of the drawer for recovery of the amount on the basis of the payment in the mistake. But the collecting bank just contented that he received that check in the ordinary course of business. See, in this case, there is a case where the signature as well as the material, all the things are forged in the check. Now, paying bank has cleared the payment funds, but as soon as he detect the default, he just sue the collecting bank who has collected the check and the pay for the recovery of the amount. Now, in this case, the collecting bank says that, okay, I have received that check, and this check was so perfectly done that the normal trained eyes cannot detect the error in this check. And so I haven't detected that check, and the forgery was so perfect that it is nearly impossible for a trained eye to detect that imperfection, and that's why I am not liable for the payment, and that's why collecting bank is not liable for any of the repayment. And whenever the drawee is concerned, the pay is concerned, pay said that he received the check from person which is actually associated with the company, and so there is no circumstances in which he can just judge that, okay, I will not be paying or this check should be a fraud. The pay said that I only dispatched the good once I have received the check, and the check is collected by the collecting bank and everything was good. When the check is under the process of the clearing, then only I have dispatched my good. So how I will be paying that amount back, because this amount is mine, because this amount is on the payment of my goods which I have supplied to the supplier. So this is the not the responsibility of the mine. So these are two things. First of all, paying bank first clear the payment, and then the paying bank is wanting their money back from either the collecting bank or the pay. But both are what? Both are again, they are not held to responsible in such forgery. First, why? Because the forgery is done in so perfection that it is nearly impossible to detect that forgery. So the collecting bank says that I cannot detect that forgery. I have received that check in good faith and in the due course of the business, and that's why there is no condition in which I can just what suspect this check, and that's why I will not be paying that liability. And when pay is concerned, pay said that I have received that check from the person which is associated with the bank. Now, once the check has been collected by the collection bank and the check is in the process, and now the collection bank has confirmed me that okay, the check is correct and the check is in the clearing purpose, and then only I have dispatched the goods to the buyer, and now it is not the default of mine. Okay, and that's why I will not be responsible for paying that amount. So this is correct in both ways. Okay, done, clear. So this is the chapter. This is the complete chapter, and I hope that you have enjoyed this chapter. If you have enjoyed this chapter, just please keep on liking and sharing the video. Okay, done. Okay, now the questions are related with what? The questions are related. Some I will be discussing some one or two questions with you. First of all, the law relating to the payment of check and protection to the bank is contained in which act? Okay, this contained in which act? Which act is for the protection and the payment of the check? Which act is for the protection and the payment of the banker? Obviously, there is the Negotiable Instrument Act, which is the law which is related to the payment and the protection of the banker. Next, a customer is bound to inform the dash about the check leaves. If there is the lost check leave, so a customer must inform to whom for the check leave. So the customer must inform the drawee bank for the lost check leaf. Clear? Okay. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you have enjoyed the session. If you have enjoyed the session, just please like and share the video to the maximum you can. Thank you so much. Till then, take care. Bye bye, guys. Bye, everyone. Take care.